Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
What's up, Coach? Are you looking for a way to elevate your off-season skill development? Well, look no further. With the Bology app, you can build a workout with our library or create your own content. Send that workout to your players, and then your players complete the workout by recording their session on their phones. You can monitor and encourage competition with our leaderboards for every workout. Bology offers player development solutions in the palm of your hands. Get your team started today by going to bology.com for more info.
I love getting to learn about standards and pillars of programs. And I think it's really fun to see that, one, I think good coaches and good programs, they do have standards that they live by, and not necessarily just rules, but those pillars that are really important to them. And then to see how, there are similarities between programs. And so for you and your program, what are some of the standards and pillars?
Well, I agree with you about having standards and pillars, just being helpful for just establishing the identity of a program, especially for new players to come in to understand what they're getting into, but also for the returners. There's a daily reminder and a piece of accountability. And so our first one is contagious positive energy. It was almost 10 years ago now. Read The Energy Bus by John Gordon.
Nice.
And went through it with my team. And so now that's actually something that we go through, like in the onboarding process before players even start going to school here at Midwestern State. My assistant coach has a curriculum that he goes through and works through the process with them, utilizing that book. It's an easy read, but just in terms of how we're going to treat each other, how we're going to go about our business every day, and just encourage each other, because basketball seasons are hard, and without that contagious positive energy, there's that tendency to just wear people down.
Yeah.
And then our second one is compete. We want players who want to win. We want to sell out to win. There is a scoreboard. We keep score, and we want our players to do everything they can to go out there and earn a victory. And so competing is very important in everything that we do. And the third one is sacrifice. Basketball is a team game. There's a shared element that goes into everything that we do, and you have to give of yourself in order for the benefit of the team. We're trying, the sum of the pieces, to be, or of the whole, to be greater than the individual pieces, and also the sacrifice element is that for their future. Those who want to be good at the game of basketball or sport or anything in life, the road is full of sacrifices in the short term for the long-term success. And so, I use the example a lot of how a lot of these players who want to be good in basketball and life, they're choosing a lonely path. And it's going to require them to do some things that are outside their comfort zone, or aren't the cool thing to do, that they have to sacrifice for. And then lastly, the fourth pillar is integrity. We want to do the right things. We want to treat people right, and just have quality human beings that want to lay that moral foundation for the rest of their life. We're not perfect, but we do try to get young men to think about the big picture, about what their name represents in their life on a daily basis. Your reputation precedes you in every room that you walk into, and people are going to, they're going to look at your decisions, and they're going to judge you, good, bad, or indifferent. And so we always want them to be mindful of that integrity piece in everything that they do in their lives.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing those four. One nugget I think I wrote down at the beginning, which was interesting, was that for the new players, looking at it more of like an onboarding system, kind of like if you're hired somewhere, hey, you got to go through this training before you actually start working here. I wonder how many coaches or programs, even if they have pillars, bring somebody new in and just kind of hope along the way that they figure it out. I mean, we'll get to those eventually, but if culture is important to you, the way that you do things is important, then that type of activity, and especially surrounding like a book like the Energy Bus, which is awesome. What is that process like for, and if you don't mind getting a little more specific with how your coach takes them through, when, all of those things?
Well, sure. And to kind of go back through that, another piece that goes into this, that's just an element of who I am, my staff. We're a staff of believers, and everything that we do, we kind of utilize the hashtag, so to speak, of be uncommon, and the uncommon man, Jesus Christ, who we try to look to in Luke 2:52 is, and Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. And that's kind of the blueprint of how we work through these things. And we go through that in the recruiting process. And so each of those pillars tie back to that in some way. And to your question about when we do the book, we're going to assign some reading to new recruits, and that's one of them. And there are a series of questions, kind of about 10, that we'll work through. In an ideal setting, what he'll do is, they'll go a couple chapters in review each day and have some Q&A. Can be anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes a day. Can be on a Zoom, could be, get a couple people on the phone, or if we have them in person, we can do it that way. But it just gives them an opportunity to just work through, the content, talk about some examples that are specific to basketball that come up during the course of the season, whether it's in practice, in a locker room, after, before, halftime of a game, or on the bench, all the different things. And so that's before we ever take the court as a team in the preseason.
I love that, the idea of, again, taking them through something that maybe the idea or quote that like Belichick had of, you don't become like you become us, we don't become you, or I butchered that, but whatever yes. order that's in. I like that, and I understand. And I think when new players come in, it is their job to adapt and figure out what the culture is, figure out how they fit into it. But again, it's like, how often do we just hope that happens? Or, that is the standard of, you got to become us. Well, what is us? Like, sure. What actually does that mean? And so if we can figure out a way to shorten that window, or the gap between what they were, who they were, and then what it means to be a part of your program, that makes a lot of sense. And Coach, that's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been around a little while, but I had a good mentor that I worked for, and a lot of what I do, I've just I've stolen from him.
But, that's all. Yeah, borrowing is an art. Yeah,
that's exactly right. I mean, to that point, usually, I mean, an old line I stole is, the first 3 times I use something, I'll give credit to the source, but after 3, it's mine.
Man, then I have a ton of quotes then that I've created.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Luke 2:52. I've heard that verse. I don't ever claim to, like, if you were to say, what's Luke 2:52, I wouldn't have known that that's what that verse is. But I've heard that. But I've never thought of it as what we're trying to do or accomplish with these young men, or ourselves. Sure. We do want to be Christ-like, and I'm at Grapevine Faith Christian School, and so like that, it's really easy for us. Actually, we're mandated, to have that type of infusion in everything we do. But we talk about being Christ-like, and but then we don't necessarily focus on him as a young man. That, and he was the God man, like he was fully human, and so he had to grow into that in wisdom, in knowledge. And obviously, I mean, he did that really well. But that is a great goal for all of us, and for our players. Is, what, you might not be, none of us are where you want to be in your faith today, and that's okay. But we're growing in that, and what a great example of how, as Jesus was growing up, those are those verses that I mean, golly, we read through real fast because that part of his life is so we know very little about it. But Coach, I love that. I wrote that down and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no, like I say, it's one of those small, excerpts of passage in scripture that you can really apply to who we are as a basketball program and where these young men are in their lives. And so we try to incorporate elements of, part of that, in favor with man, it's the service component. Basketball players by nature are entitled. These young men have been the best on their teams. They've been told how great they are and probably
Yeah.
had a lot of opportunities to kind of pass through without a lot of accountability. And so this is a moment where we can get their attention when they really face adversity and realize that they need to get outside of themselves and serve others,
Yeah.
right? How do I, become a good teammate and a better role model to others in the community who may come watch? A lot of children, back to the energy bus. Ultimately that is a relational piece that happens, with their teammates. But then in addition, wisdom, tying it back to their academics. And, I want our students to be, great in the classroom. The expectation is they all get their diplomas and excel there. But I'll use the line a lot that I don't want their schoolwork to get in the way of their college education. There's so much more that happens in this stage of their life in terms of growing as young men
Mm.
in just, all the different things you could possibly imagine
Yeah.
that we get to interact with and we get to tackle on a daily basis. And so it's all woven into the curriculum of, their one in this day and age, a lot of them, the 4 years in the program,
Yeah.
of how we want to just hit all these various touch points to make sure that, we've done everything we can to build these young men and equip them for success in whatever endeavor they go into the rest of their lives.
I think that kind of flows right into the sacrifice piece and the lonely path that you were talking about. Because the truth is, and this is, I feel like, an uncommon thing to tell our players, and I don't know if their parents like to hear it either, but it is really hard to be great at everything and to do everything.
Yeah.
And so at that, there are so many components to the college experience that are necessary for them. But then how do you encourage them on that lonely path? Like, what does that really look like for, your players? What are the things that you feel like time wise, or maybe with activities that they need to sacrifice in order to be great at the few things that they really need to focus on?
Well, I'm sure you've heard the line from Jim Collins' book, beginning with the end in mind. And a lot of players when they come in, right off the bat, they're able to articulate what they want the end result to look like. But where
Mm,
they struggle is, what does it look like to get there? What does the process look like?
yeah.
And that's the picture that I have to draw for them is what does it look like to get from where you're at to where you want to be? That's where I come in as a coach, to walk alongside you and help put that together. And one of the first thing that always happens is they have to realize that there are priorities. I've had a good track record of sending players on to play professionally when they're done at various levels. Had about 35 players, I think I'm
Wow.
at so far. And the reality is that they have to develop the skills of professionalism long before they're ever a professional, right? And that involves saying no to certain things, saying yes to others, learning the value of time management, how to develop, the ability to focus on tasks and things that need to be addressed, not
Mm,
becoming distracted. And also I'd say more than anything is just the consistency of the process and what it takes. And it's people always say, you underestimate what you can do in 6 months to a year, but they'll overestimate what can be done in a week, right? I mean, it takes a lot of time, to change behaviors, to change movement patterns, to change, skills,
yeah.
as a player. And but I use that lonely path example a lot because I get a lot of players that They're ambitious in their careers. They're ambitious in what they want to do as a basketball player, educationally. And it's like, well, you can't go spend 5 hours a day playing video games or just wandering around campus with whatever the next fun thing to do is and expect to get an uncommon result if you're doing common things.
Yeah.
And so just having those conversations, I think, is a big component throughout the process.
Yeah. No, that's good. And I wrote down that the book, Burn Your Goals by Joshua Medcalf made me think of that of goals are fine to have, but not if they're the only thing you're focused on, to the point where you don't do the necessary steps to get there. And to your point, like how do our players really know what it takes? A kid tells me you want to play college basketball. Awesome. Let's write down last week what your time looked like. And let's really see, because and you could even tie that back to our faith. Like we try to talk with our players about what about you says that you're a believer. If just because you go to Grapevine Faith Christian School, if that's it, like that's not enough. Like, so we're trying to get to those daily habits, those things that, that we're watching, that we're listening to. But I think it really relates to players. Look at your day and you tell me, like, really, what are you trying to be a professional at? Because I would say most of them, it would be a professional relationship person with the girl, or professional gamer, right? Like, because that's what they're spending the most of their time on.
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And that's that element of sacrifice. Life's about choices.
Yeah.
You have a finite amount of time, and how you use it is ultimately going to dictate what your results are and what path you go down.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.